Today we're going to talk about altered level of consciousness, or ALOC. One of the biggest things to remember right from the beginning is that altered LOC is not a diagnosis by itself. It is a symptom that something is wrong neurologically, metabolically, toxicologically, or structurally. Consciousness exists on a continuum. A patient may start out mildly confused or lethargic, then progress to obtundation, stupor, and eventually coma. And as nurses, one of our most important responsibilities is recognizing subtle neurologic decline early before the patient deteriorates further. You'll also hear terms like minimally conscious state, persistent vegetative state, akinetic mutism, and locked-in syndrome. Those are all very different neurologic conditions, and understanding the differences matters clinically. This slide shows the progression from normal consciousness all the way to coma. As patients decline neurologically, they require increasing stimulation to respond. Lethargic patients may wake easily, but drift back to sleep. Obtunded patients respond slowly and are difficult to arouse. Stuporous patients require repeated or painful stimulation. And comatose patients are completely unresponsive. You'll also see terms like minimally conscious state, persistent vegetative state, and locked-in syndrome. Those are very different neurologic conditions, so it's important not to confuse them clinically. Let's compare several severe neurologic states that are commonly confused clinically. First is coma. In a coma, the patient has no meaningful awareness of the environment. There is no purposeful communication, no normal sleep-wake cycle, and motor responses are absent, or only reflexive responses to pain. Next is akinetic mutism. These patients may appear awake because their eyes can open, but they do not initiate movement or communication. There is no voluntary motor activity, and they remain unresponsive to the environment. Now compare that with persistent vegetative state, or PVS. Patients in PVS have sleep-wake cycles, so they may open their eyes and appear awake, but there is no meaningful cognitive awareness or purposeful interaction with the environment. And finally, locked-in syndrome. This is one of the most important conditions not to miss. These patients are fully conscious and cognitively aware, but they have complete paralysis except for vertical eye movements or blinking. That means they may still communicate through eye movements, even though they cannot speak or move their body. Clinically, careful neurologic assessment is critical because locked-in syndrome can initially appear similar to coma if eye movement and awareness are not assessed carefully. When comparing these conditions, focus on 4 major areas: motor activity, cognitive awareness, sleep-wake cycles, and communication ability. Those differences help distinguish these severe neurologic states from one another. When we evaluate altered LOC, we always want to identify the underlying cause. Causes are commonly grouped into neurologic, metabolic, and toxicologic categories. Neurologic causes include stroke and traumatic brain injury. Metabolic causes include liver failure, kidney failure, electrolyte disturbances, and diabetic ketoacidosis. Toxicologic causes include alcohol intoxication and drug overdose. The important thing to remember is that altered LOC is often the brain's response to a larger systemic problem. The Glasgow Coma Scale is one of the most important neurologic assessment tools. It evaluates 3 categories: eye-opening, verbal response, and motor response. A score of 15 represents normal neurologic function. A score of 3 indicates severe neurologic dysfunction. Remember that trends matter more than isolated scores. We also assess pupils, cranial nerves, motor strength, reflexes, and sensory responses. Another important clinical clue is that abnormal pupils in coma often suggest a neurologic cause, while normal pupils may suggest a metabolic or toxicologic cause. This slide brings together 2 extremely important neurologic assessment clues: motor posturing and pupil changes. Let's start with posturing. First is decorticate posturing. In decorticate positioning, the arms are flexed inward toward the body, while the legs remain extended. This usually indicates damage above the brainstem, typically involving the cerebral hemispheres. Now compare that with decerebrate posturing. In decerebrate positioning, the arms and legs are fully extended and rigid. This is more concerning because it indicates brainstem involvement and carries a worse prognosis. And finally, flaccidity. Flaccid positioning means there is no muscle tone present at all. This is considered the most severe motor finding and is associated with very poor neurologic outcomes. Now let's connect that to the pupils. Pupil assessment gives us rapid clues about what may be causing the altered LOC. If the pupils are normal and reactive, the cause is more likely metabolic or toxicologic. If the pupils are abnormal or unequal, we become more concerned about a structural lesion. And fixed, dilated pupils are a major neurologic emergency because they may indicate increased intracranial pressure or midbrain injury. This slide also highlights another important concept involving brainstem reflexes. Absent corneal reflexes or absent swallowing reflexes suggest severe brainstem dysfunction. So clinically, when you assess a neuro patient, you are constantly putting these clues together: posturing, pupil changes, reflexes, and overall responsiveness to help localize where neurologic injury may be occurring. This slide really captures the core philosophy of caring for a patient with altered level of consciousness. The primary nursing goal is to artificially compensate for the patient's loss of protective reflexes. In other words, when the patient can no longer protect themselves neurologically, the nurse temporarily takes over those protective functions. A healthy patient blinks spontaneously to protect the cornea. An ALOC patient may lose that reflex, so the nurse provides artificial tears or methylcellulose eye drops to prevent corneal injury. A healthy patient automatically swallows saliva and clears secretions. An unconscious patient may lose the swallow reflex, so now the nurse has to perform suctioning and airway management to prevent aspiration. A healthy patient naturally shifts weight and repositions themselves to relieve pressure. An immobile patient cannot do that, so the nurse turns and repositions the patient every 2 hours to prevent pressure injuries and improve circulation. And a healthy patient coughs spontaneously to clear the airway. But with altered LOC, the cough reflex may be absent or weak, meaning the nurse now has to maintain airway patency through positioning, suctioning, oxygen support, or even ventilatory support. This is why neuronursing requires constant vigilance. You are not simply monitoring the patient. You are actively replacing lost neurologic protective mechanisms until recovery occurs or the neurologic outcome becomes clearer. One of the biggest nursing priorities with altered LOC is airway protection. These patients are at risk for airway obstruction because the tongue and epiglottis relax. They are also at high risk for aspiration. Interventions include elevating the head of the bed to about 30 degrees, positioning laterally when appropriate, suctioning secretions, and providing frequent oral care. Safety is also critical. We use padded side rails, monitor for dislodged tubes or devices, and maintain a safe environment. And remember to always speak respectfully to unconscious patients, because hearing may still remain intact. Every body system now requires nursing support because the patient can no longer maintain many normal protective functions independently. Let's start with skin and joint protection. These patients are at very high risk for pressure injuries, foot drop, muscle shortening, and contractures because they are immobile. So nursing interventions include turning every 2 hours, using foam boots, trochanter rolls, and performing passive range of motion exercises. Now let's look at corneal protection. If the patient loses the blink reflex, the corneas can dry out very quickly. That's why we cleanse the eyes with sterile saline, apply artificial tears, and sometimes use protective eye shields. And remember, we avoid placing cold compresses or patches directly on the cornea because that can cause injury. Hydration and nutrition are also critical. IV fluid should be infused slowly because rapid fluid administration can increase intracranial pressure. Enteral feeding through an NG tube or PEG tube is often started early to reduce the risk of malnutrition. Temperature regulation is another important neuro priority. We try to maintain normothermia around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Persistent fever without an infectious source can suggest hypothalamic or brainstem dysfunction. And notice the warning here. We avoid oral temperatures in unconscious patients because of aspiration risk. Finally, elimination management. Bladder scanning helps prevent urinary retention and overflow incontinence. We try to avoid Foley catheters unless absolutely necessary because of infection risk. And stool softeners are commonly used with enteral feedings to help maintain bowel function. So this entire slide reinforces an important neuro concept. The nurse is continuously managing multiple protective systems simultaneously to prevent secondary injury and complications. This slide focuses on both physical safety and emotional safety for the patient with altered LOC. Let's start with physical safety. Padded side rails are commonly used to help protect the patient from injury, especially if seizure activity or agitation occurs. A general guideline is 2 rails up during the day and 3 rails up at night. But an important reminder here is that using all 4 side rails is considered a restraint, and physical restraints should never be used without a written provider order. We also try to avoid restraints whenever possible because restraints can actually increase agitation and increase intracranial pressure. Now let's talk about emotional safety and dignity. Even if the patient appears unconscious, auditory function may still remain intact. That means we should always speak directly to the patient respectfully, explain care, provide privacy, and preserve dignity. And we avoid negative or hopeless conversations in the patient's room. Now, the bottom section of this slide is extremely important clinically. As patients begin emerging neurologically, agitation is actually common and may indicate neural recovery. Our instinct is sometimes to overstimulate or repeatedly reorient the patient aggressively, but that can worsen confusion and agitation. Instead, we minimize stimulation. Use calm voices, dim lighting, soft music if appropriate, and allow only one person speaking at a time. Patients recovering from altered LOC often need extra processing time, so allowing longer response times is important. This phase requires patience, calm communication, and careful environmental control. A major part of neuronursing is preventing complications before they happen. Patients with altered LOC are extremely vulnerable because immobility and loss of protective reflexes affect nearly every body system. One major risk is VTE, including DVT and pulmonary embolism. Because these patients are often immobile, we use subcutaneous heparin, SCDs, repositioning, and passive ROM to reduce clot formation. We also monitor for calf swelling, redness, sudden dyspnea, or chest pain. Contractures are another major concern. Without movement, muscles shorten and joints stiffen quickly. So interventions include splints, proper hand positioning, foam boots, and passive range of motion exercises. Pneumonia and aspiration are also common complications because patients may lose their cough and swallow reflexes. That's why head-of-bed elevation and frequent oral care are so important. Now on the right side are the outcomes we hope to maintain through nursing interventions. We want oxygenation stable, with ABGs and oxygen saturation within normal limits. We want balanced intake and output with stable electrolytes and kidney function. We want moist, intact oral mucosa and corneas without breakdown or injury. And we want normothermia maintained without persistent fever or shivering. So neuronursing is very proactive. The goal is not simply treating complications after they occur, but preventing secondary injury before it develops. Families of patients with altered LOC often experience tremendous emotional crisis. They may move through shock, denial, fear, grief, anger, or emotional exhaustion very quickly, sometimes all within the same conversation. Part of the nurse's role is not only caring for the patient, but also helping support and guide the family through the uncertainty. One important intervention is reorientation and integration. We encourage family members to speak to the patient, read aloud, hold the patient's hand, bring in familiar photos, or play familiar music. If the patient recovers consciousness later, these familiar connections may help with emotional reintegration and memory gaps. Another major responsibility is providing honest updates. Families need clear, consistent communication that aligns with the provider team. We avoid giving false reassurance or creating unrealistic expectations. Now, one of the most difficult conversations in healthcare is the discussion about brain death. Brain death is the irreversible loss of all brain and brainstem function, and families can struggle with this because the patient may still appear warm, have a heartbeat, and appear to be breathing due to mechanical ventilation and supportive medications. So it's important to clearly explain that brain death is not the same as coma or persistent vegetative state. And finally, support systems matter tremendously. Social work, spiritual care, palliative care, rehabilitation services, and organ donation teams may all become part of the support process for the family. One of the biggest takeaways from this lecture is that the lifeline doesn't stop with the patient. The lifeline also extends to the family.